Our main character in this story, Noro, believed those words because he knew that the choice of equipment in this world was what determined a person's entire life. It all began at the Mahalish City Adventurer Guild, where a poor soul, our protagonist Noro, was being beaten by the members of his group like his dog. When you asked for payment for the mission you just got back, they told Noro that his holding and carrying their weapons was already a payment enough for someone like him, and that he should even feel indebted to them, pushing him against the wall. Noro Lito was currently part of adventurers classified as G, and since last week had been forced to carry only the equipment of the group of adventurers. Not only that, but he had been exploited in that time, and these guys even used him as bait for the monsters. He knew that no one in this world deserved to be treated so cruelly, but he understood why these guys were talking bad about him. The guy from the group he was working on approached and warned Noro not to challenge the word of a Class B adventurer, with 3 equipment slots, golden shield, armor and sword with good statistics enhancements. He told Noro not to forget his place of 0 slots, so he wasn't allowed to return that superior. Noro apologized for his behavior, and these things have happened to him so many times that he thought he could deserve it, and that this was a proper treatment for someone like him, who couldn't hold equipment like the others. He was already used to people taking out his anger for no reason all the time, and at this point he didn't even bother to defend himself, because he was used to being the target of attacks for no reason. Treating someone like that had dulled his emotions to the point that he found nothing more frustrating. With an empty eye, his eyes clearly showed that he wasn't even focused on watching something in front of him. But the boy in the group still intimidated him and kicked him out of the group, claiming that Noro was a burden to them, something to be carried to the dungeon. Noro's self-confidence had been tarnished over time, so much so that he got the nickname Noro Zero. Noro stated that what happened to him at the time was a normal day in his life. After that, your eyes. They shone with excitement when they saw the great armor of agate, which he had never seen before. Noro was a person of his word. He was fascinated by the beauty of this equipment, because Noro was an equipment lover, even if he could not use them. He wanted to be able to equip an adamantine armor someday, and only the thought of it made his imagination so wild that it made him drool. He decided that, without equipment, someone's life wasn't a big deal. For these equipments, like the weapons of an adventurer, the scriptures that the priests carried, and the writing tools of a scribe, were things that provided advantages and effects to themselves. These equipments may appear only items used for convenience, but they could make a big difference in the boundaries between life and death, and determine which side they would cross. However, the equipment itself did not mean so much, since most depended on who could manifest them and how many, because if someone who did not have the necessary vacancies to manipulate a weapon, then the equipment would not show its power, because it would be considered not worthy of them. He claimed that someone could equip armor for the first time, and then learn how to use it based on their equipment spaces. The vacancies determined how talented people were, and each one had their own vacancies, ranging from 1 to ordinary people, 2 to an excellent fighting professional, 3 to a great warrior. And lastly, if anyone had 7 vacancies, then he was considered heroic class. But unfortunately, Noro Zero didn't have any room to manipulate equipment like the others. He did not understand why, of all people, he was born without vacancies, especially in a world where equipment was everything, and his suffering didn't stop there. Because someone like him would never be able to manipulate any equipment like the others, but if he had no equipment, it was called zero, and nobody respected him. While he was thinking, he accidentally bumped into a box that was being loaded by Yabuki, the owner of this gun shop and a retired adventurer. He saw that it was Noro again who had come to his shop. So, as always, he refused to sell the armor of adamant to him. He asked Noro if he would ever get tired of looking at that piece of equipment every day. But since Noro couldn't say much, he apologized for it. Then Yabuki put the box down and saw that Yabuki drew a sword and examined it carefully. Noro asked about that sword, and Yabuki claimed that he had not yet evaluated the sword, but, from what he could see by the aspects, it could be rank B or something, with an attack power greater than 100. An equipment lover was surprised even with this sword and called it cute, as if he were addressing a person. Yabuki told Noro to stay away from the sword before it fell out of her eyes by looking too much at her. Realized that he was still as obsessed with weapons as ever. But I didn't expect Noro to even want to marry an exposed armor or some piece of supreme equipment. Yabuki felt a little ashamed about it. Then, Noro suddenly heard a voice calling for him. Noro turned to see where the voice came from, but he couldn't see anything but some equipment that was kept behind him. He wondered where a girl's voice might have come from. Then again, the voice came and asked where he was going while trying to inform him about his whereabouts. So, Noro followed the voice and found a doll kept in a cage. He wondered if that voice came from that doll. But you thought it was impossible to happen. The doll tried to tell him he wasn't dreaming or something, but Noro asked Yabuki if he had said anything. The doll was unsatisfied for being ignored like that, but she couldn't move on her own unless someone teamed her up as an item. Then Noro asked Yabuki if he had any cursed equipment in his collection, and Yabuki was a little alarmed to hear this. Since cursed items were known as the enemy of the adventurers who depended on equipment to obtain strength, they had no prerequisites but to cling to use with a simple touch. After that, they consumed one of their precious spaces of equipment for the rest of their lives, which was very similar to having two hands, but only being able to use one. However, there is still no known method that can be used to remove cursed equipment in this world. Therefore, they remain equipped to a person until he dies, which was a condition cursed by using a cursed item. Yabuki said that there were some cursed items used to remove. Cursed items that blend between the pile of normal equipment he owns. But he mentioned that there is no adventurer who would never irrationally touch cursed equipment. Noro understood Yabuki's concerns, but he was sad to think he had no hope. Yabuki realized that Noro was desperate and shook hands, and that he felt bad for him. He claimed that he could not understand what was leading Noro to explore cursed items, but you gave him some advice. Noro, or any adventurer, they must stay away from cursed equipment. Noro mentioned that if cursed items were used, they would be illegal. To what Yabuki confirmed that this should be obvious, but he was trying to tell Noro that, from the experience he had up until then, he had witnessed how much a single piece of cursed equipment could do damage, and, like their names, they really cursed many lives and ruined people to the point of awe. If someone could escape their cursed equipment, they would have to pay the price of using them, losing their sanity and blood, which would eventually kill them in the same way, or in a more horrifying way, and sometimes even people who just glanced at these equipment ended up dead. Noro was shocked to hear the extent of danger that a cursed item could pose, so he tried to deny believing it and told Yabuki that he was just trying to scare Noro, and that he wouldn't fall for something like that. Yabuki reiterated his words more seriously, saying that if it is cursed equipment, they are dangerous. Noro could no longer deny it when Yabuki sounded honest at that moment. While Yabuki kept saying that he had witnessed many stories of cursed equipment, like a cursed weapon that killed someone at random when it was fired, Yabuki informed him that the details he had just given him about cursed tools were still just a drop in the ocean, while they actually had much more dangerous effects. Noro had an idea how dangerous he was thinking, but inside still wanted to find a cursed tool. Yabuki realized how Noro was feeling, so he sighed when he said he couldn't seem to persuade him. Yabuki asked Noro if he had ever been to the no-return tomb, and Noro remembered that it was the same dungeon he had visited before, with the horrid group that defeated him before when he asked them to pay him. Yabuki informed him that he heard something at the bar. There was the possibility that the treasure chest was located in the depths of the no-return tomb. In addition, it was believed that the trunk could contain cursed equipment. Yabuki added that no one seemed to have claimed the treasure until then. And he asked if Noro would want to try to get that reward, since he wanted that cursed equipment so badly. Noro was a little dazzled to hear Yabuki say that about someone. Because Yabuki personally warned him how difficult it would be, clearly, for someone without slots like Noro to reach the depths of the dungeon. So Yabuki concluded by informing him that he would be grateful if he had one less person to disrupt his business. But Noro could see that Yabuki said all this out of concern for his well-being. So he bowed down and thanked Yabuki, and then he left the gun shop. It was time for the night. When he thought that, maybe, had found a way to acquire that cursed equipment. If he really was there in the dungeon, he knew the risk of involving the cursed equipment, but he wished he had his own equipment. Mainly because she couldn't equip any weapons or armor, since she had 0 slots, and that's where the origin of her title came from, Noro the Zero. Which led him to be criticized. So, Noro revealed that his 0 slots weren't completely correct, because he had actually kept a secret. It was true that he could not equip anything, but he had slots, opened your statso, and saw that their real equipment slots were 9,999, and found out he'd been lying about his slots all along. But the problem was that he had an unknown accessory that cursed all his equipment slots, and his condition of retreat was that he could only use cursed equipment and nothing else. Noro had no idea how, when, and where he had gotten this mysterious accessory. He didn't even know what his shape or appearance was, or exactly what he looked like. What he knew was that the heart of the question resided in the fact that, due to the condition of this equipment, he was unable to equip normal items. On the other hand, Noro could equip as many items as he wanted, as long as they were cursed. He vaguely remembered a maiden figure telling him that in the future he would become stronger than anyone in this world. She claimed that he could become even stronger than her, which illuminated the idea that she was even stronger than herself. He often recalls this ancient and diffuse memory of him, where a mysterious person told him these words, becoming his hope for a long time during his suffering. He remembered that this mysterious person asked him to look for cursed equipment, which would lead him to find her again. And then she told him that he would be able to save her. He recalled the universal truth again, that equipment determines a person's life. So he had to agree to use cursed equipment if it was the only option available. Now, he was willing to risk everything using them, even if it ruined his own life, and went to the level dungeon. Be called the Tomb of No Return. No fight, or anything he could defend himself with. He seemed to be following the same group he had treated badly before, because he felt that if he got into the dungeon alone, it would certainly be his dumbest decision. Though his chances of defeating even a monster while he was unarmed were almost nil, but Noro had thought of another way to resolve this part. Follow, and take advantage of a strong group that could clean the dungeon. He thought that the guy with 3 slots of equipment was considered one of the strongest in his city for a good reason, and since he knew they came here as if they were the strongest in the world, he decided to follow him until the last time to explore the area, so he could imagine that that guy's group might have planned to end the whole dungeon at once. And while that was happening, he thought he just had to hide behind them, while fighting the monsters and clearing the way, taking what's left, and then waiting until the group left the cursed equipment behind, since nobody wanted them. He was planning on taking this cursed item and leaving the place with it. Noro knew his plan was pathetic, but he was doing everything he could. Then suddenly a skeleton came and grabbed his hand. The undead began to pull him back, which made Noro lose track of the adventurers. He tried to take his free hand, But all I had with you was a bronze sword, which I couldn't wield. So all you could do was use that sword as a mere heavy piece of bronze that could move around. The situation was urgent for Noro to break free from the tightness of the skeleton. Then he moved and thought of applying a single blow. He thought that would be enough to create a chance to escape, so he attacked the skeleton with the bronze sword with all the force he had. You thought that would be enough, but to your surprise, the skeleton turned to look at him and directly attacked his stomach, which made Noro fly back and hit the wall. His sword also broke with that impact, leaving him without hope of defeating even this classification monster. He was scared as the skeleton approached him, so he quickly gathered all his forces to escape. And after a while, succeeding in escape, he could imagine that in all this time he just escaped, and that these adventurers were probably almost finished the dungeon. He looked at his broken sword, and he felt bad, because even if he couldn't wield that sword anymore, he actually spent all his years of economics buying it. Noro's life was as difficult and full of disappointments as possible. Besides the fact that he couldn't even defeat the weakest monsters on the lowest level, which only increased how badly you felt about yourself. All he wanted was to get stronger, use shiny equipment, and use them to defeat powerful enemies as a true adventurer. But today, when your sword broke, he was reminded again that he should give up his dreams of adventure and accept the bitter reality that there was no hope of him getting stronger. Couldn't help wondering if he'd always stay Noro the Zero. So when you came to town, he heard loud sounds coming from the village, and suddenly a great explosion occurred, destroying many buildings. And the impact of that explosion was strong enough to make it fly backwards. After that, he realized that the armor of Adamanto who wished to be resting among the rubble of the old gun shop, and that this store wasn't the only thing being destroyed, but the whole town was being crushed by something sinister. Noro soon heard Yabuki's familiar voice, and Noro expressed that he was happy to see Yabuki, while Yabuki was not happy to have lost his shop. Noro helped him get up, and it was there that the cause of all that destruction came before him. And Yabuki informed Noro that what he was seeing now was the living example of another cursed equipment. It seemed that the guys who went to clean up the dungeon made the foolish mistake of holding the damn equipment and, in return, lost their sanity after not being able to control it. Noro remembered this guy, and that's the first time he's seen some damn equipment. Yabuki told him not to stand there but to run, because it was too dangerous here. Noro suggested to him that they could hide better, so Yabuki told him that no one was safe against an opponent armed with cursed equipment. So instead of running away, Yabuki set up his equipment like an adventurer. He assured Noro that he would certainly find a way to get them out of that situation alive. As he said, he had already left much worse situations than that. Noro trusted his words and reached out to hold Yabuki's hand. But in the next fraction of a second, Yabuki's hand was all that was left of him. Yabuki's entire body was torn into pieces before his own body realized it. And Noro could not believe that his last hope had been cut like butter, while Yabuki's hand, soaked in blood, fell. It took Noro some time to understand what had happened to Yabuki as his corpse fell. And the adventurous Riz, who was being controlled by the cursed weapon, stood right in front of him. Noro had no idea what had happened to Yabuki. Riz approached Noro, and he could not move out of fear, even if he wanted to escape. Noro knew he would die at that rate, while Riz, cursed, stared into his eyes with all the thirst for blood and cursed energy emanating from him. The moods became intense, and Noro's heart began to accelerate more and more. Then, he realized Riz wasn't attacking him for some reason. He felt that this was his chance to escape, but it would be too big a risk if he moved. Besides, he saw no sense in running away to save his life, since it would only return to what it was before. Noro had no idea what had happened to Yabuki. and Noro had no idea what had happened to Yabuki, which was already miserable in his opinion. He thought that if that pathetic life was what he would have to return after he ran away, it would be a better choice just to die right there. Noro wished his death was at least painless. As I closed my eyes, ready to be killed, then he heard a yawn from somewhere between all that noise, and that voice from before came back to talk, murmuring if there was any construction going on out there, saying that. Hearing all that noise, it meant that the speaker was stuck somewhere. While Noro wondered what voice it was, and most importantly, where it came from again, Noro had no idea what that was. After that, the moment he opened his eyes, the mysterious speaker wondered what happened there, and saw that the whole city, with every building in it, had been flattened like a field. She wondered if she'd missed something wonderful because she overslept. Noro heard that mysterious voice of a girl who said she'd be left with no one for infinity if Noro died without her. She told him that he would be in danger, so he should survive. While Noro thought he was going mad because he heard voices because his death was approaching, then he realized that all those voices came from a doll in a cage in front of him. The doll kept talking, but he could only hear her voice without seeing her mouth move. He remembered that this doll had stayed at Yabuki's store before, and then the doll called him. She informed him that he was in equipment, so he should equip her if he didn't want to have his life dragged away, like all the life he's been through. He was confused by being ordered by equipment, equipping him. Meanwhile, the doll, frustrated by having to explain everything to him as if she were a foolish child, said she was cursed equipment, something even a child could perceive. She said all he had to do was touch her to equip her. And when he heard about cursed equipment, he was a little surprised. The doll thought he hesitated because of her price, so she tried to lure him by telling herself that she was free for a limited time. Noro had trouble believing that cursed equipment was actually in Yabuki's store while he was searching for one for so long. He was always right in front of you, and now that Yabuki's gone, he thought Yabuki might have suffered that fate of being cut to pieces because of bad luck with that cursed equipment in the first place. His hesitation increased with deep thinking. Then the doll asked him to hurry, because an attack was coming towards him. The cursed adventurer Riz appeared right behind him, and this time he was pointing his sword at Noro, but fortunately, Noro managed to avoid it thanks to the doll's warnings, which later left him worried because the doll was also in the place where Riz attacked. Then he heard the doll's voice coming from near him and, surprisingly, discovered that she was trapped in nearby rubble. The doll claimed that she had injured herself in that attack, which really amazed him, for he could swear that she was struck directly by the sword attack, which even destroyed the national treasure. The armor of adamanto, and yet survived. He realized that this doll was at least tougher than that armor, or even that cursed sword. The doll then said something that opened her eyes. That the way Noro avoided that attack with a warning meant that he still wanted to live despite how he felt before that. She told him he should equip her if that's the case, to make sure he got out of this situation alive. Noro managed to survive the attack, but the doll was still in a lot of pain. Upon hearing it, Noro doubted himself if he really wanted to live. And if so, then what to do after coming out of this and staying alive? For all that awaited him was the same miserable life, full of frustrations and regrets. That's when he felt the spark inside him, when that diffuse memory of a girl talking to him in her dreams appeared before her eyes. He did not remember who she was, but his words that they might meet again became his motivation. Now he wondered if it was really okay if he died, when he had something to wait for. And that too, with the title of Noro the Zero. His body reacted on its own by holding the doll firmly and suddenly feeling something happening to him. He had a headache, like something was overloading his mind. so much so that she screamed in pain while the doll was stuck in her hand. He fainted from pain for a minute. So when he woke up, gasping and breathing heavily, he saw that the cursed doll he carried before had become a girl. His name was Jink Palha doll, the legendary cursed item with the effects of hacking and equipment on condition that the owner's luck became 0. This doll, from now on, would always remain at his side, no matter how hard he tried to get rid of it, and this especially was one of the 7 legendary cursed dolls in the world. It took Noro some time to assimilate what had happened to him by touching that cursed doll, the moment he formed an exclusive contract with this equipment. Regardless of the curse, he was surprised to finally have his own equipment, while Jinx, the doll, was extremely excited after finally being free to move at will now. She started jumping with happiness, which made Noro doubt his actions by equipping the doll. But he knew he couldn't remove it now, because it was cursed equipment. So while she was exercising and moving, he called Jinx, and she made fun of him, asking who allowed him to talk to her so casually. She told him not to think they were a couple, just because he had equipped her. Noro was sad to see that she was certainly one of his kind, and then called her Miss Jinx by formality. She reprimanded him again for being very formal and distant, so she inflated her cheeks. She said it wasn't like she couldn't use her first name, which conveyed the idea that she wanted him to call her by her baptism name. But moving on to important matters, she asked him if he understood his skills by reading about them, and he mumbled that he had a general idea of her ability to hijack equipment. She smiled and explained in more detail that her ability could circumvent the logic of this world. Her ability was unique to her type, and with it, he could even get the cursed equipment equipped by the others. He was surprised to hear that something impossible, like getting other equipment, was possible. She told him that this was true indeed, and that if looked at correctly, she was stronger than any existing equipment. But he could only make the best use of it if he had the determination to use the cursed equipment. She gave him something, and he realized his hands were shining brightly. When he opened his hands, he found a needle in them. At the same time, the cursed Riz advanced to attack him at once. Noro told Jinx to hurry, and she replied that if she wanted to survive, all she had to do was activate the artifact with the needle she had just given her. The cursed Riz approached him fiercely. So even if Noro didn't believe if what Jinx said would help him or not, he just decided to do it. He pointed the needle at her heart, and she prepared to be pierced by the needle. By the time the needle pierced Jinx, she felt good, as if her powers were being released after a long time. She had been waiting for decades for that day. And now, while Noro and even the cursed Riz froze in their places to see Jinx turn, while laughing so loud that her voice echoed all over the city, she blatantly claimed that this was her moment now. While her face was extremely terrifying, the effects of its power were incredibly powerful, because they changed all the space and time around Noro and Riz. Holding the cursed sword, she broke Riz's hand and grabbed his sword while he could do nothing but watch. Then, after a great impact of his powers, Noro found himself lying on the ground on his back, until he understood what happened around him. Jinx greeted him and asked if he was all right. Noro asked her exactly what had happened here, and he saw Riz lying right behind her, between the rubble. Jinx pointed to his side, and following him, Noro realized that he had the cursed sword in his hand. He read that it was the Blood Ladder cursed equipment, classified as SSS. She had no attack power of 100, 200 or 500, but of 16,300, making it the strongest sword in existence, although cursed. This was a demonic sword that acquired its power from the blood it consumed from enemies. And one of the main adverse reactions of the blood thief was that it required the owner to provide blood from any creature, or itself would drink the blood of the owner himself, once cleared. This weapon would kill both enemies and allies, not to stop until it destroyed everything in the area. It was also known by another name, the Sword of Annihilation. Indicating that this sword was quite powerful, even among the cursed weapons. Jinx claimed it was really impressive that this sword could be used to kill enemies and allies, and it could get stronger, and now it belonged to Noro. While he could hardly believe he had one more piece of equipment and such a powerful sword, tears began to run from his eyes when he saw that such a beautiful sword was now his. Then Jinx shouted at him, asking how he could react to the sword, but not to her, when she was the one who did the main work. He apologized to her for the mistreatment, and she said she was happy for him, regardless, because now he wouldn't be called Noro the Zero. She told him he'd become stronger than anyone else from then on, and with some effort, he could also become the strongest man in the world. Hearing those words sounded like a scene from his vague memory of the girl, who said the same thing, who was sure that he would become stronger than anyone else in the future. Noro wondered how true that would really be. So Jinx told you to stop doubting yourself. She let him know, with a smile on his face, that he had the potential to become anything he wanted. He saw that she was right, since equipment was everything in this world, and if somehow he survived using cursed equipment, he would certainly become the strongest in the world, which took him out of life negative and led him to start a journey to collect the cursed equipment, with a doll named Jinx as his traveling companion. After that, he walked witnessing all the destruction caused in his city by a single cursed equipment. Noro was the only survivor of this chaos, and even if he did not have good memories of this place, he still felt a little hurt when he saw that the place where he was born and raised had simply disappeared. He had no one to miss, except for the one person who cared a little about him, at least Yabuki. So Jinx called him and showed him happily that he had just found a golden underwear, while he could see he had a hard time seeing his personality not even let him mourn in peace. And after that, because there was nothing else in that place, Noro decided to leave town. He began to think of where to go, since now that he had cursed equipment, there was no way of knowing how problematic they might end up becoming for him. He wondered what he should do now. So Jinx talked and asked why he was making a sad long face like that. She asked if he was hungry, and when it seemed that it was not the case, asked her to guess what might be the reason that was bothering him. He asked her not to turn her depression into some kind of guessing game, but she wanted to cheer him up, so she asked Noro to look at her face and smile like her. He looked at her trying to help him, which was very unlikely to be called cursed equipment. He claimed that she was one of the 2 cursed equipments he owned, but felt that she was not the type of equipment that brought misfortune to others. Because he tried to make him laugh by making several funny faces one after another, she asked if he was feeling better, to what he said not to ask for something that was impossible. Jinx was pretty upset to hear such sad words from him, so she yelled at him for giving a rude answer when she was just worried about him. He was surprised to see that Jinx was really worried about him, which made him really smile, because that was the first time anyone ever said that to him. He apologized to her for being like this, and she scolded him that she would not allow him to make sad faces again. He began to appreciate her company. Just then, a great crowd of people gathered around him. Everyone was laughing at him, but he didn't want to be seen by anyone. The loud noise came from the forest, which housed a huge monster walking toward Noroa. He was scared to see monsters so strong, like an evil bear. He was supposed to be an errant monster, and it was by no means normal for a monster like that to be wandering the woods. He quickly warned Jinx that they needed to run, but she was cool with it. She told you not to be a fool and run like that, when he could just draw his bloodlicker sword to end that monster in an instant. He tried to tell her that this could go wrong, because the condition of using bloodlickers was not something that was taken so seriously, but the monster wasn't as thoughtful as he was, then launched an attack on him, leaving Noroa with just one choice: use the bloodlicker sword. He held his sword firmly, and as soon as he pulled it from his hem, he felt a sense of vertigo and pressure that invaded his entire body. Noroa couldn't keep up with the increase in the cursed energy of the sword. That overloaded him to the point where he began to lose consciousness. The impact left him standing in the same place as the monster's attack approached him. But when the monster was about to attack him, he was amazed to see that his target, Noroa, was not there. Turns out, somehow, Noroa demonstrated an impressive speed to deflect from the attack, and even position behind the monster. He held the sword in his hands, then opened his eyes, which had a dark color. While releasing a berserker attack, striking a blow with his bloodlicker sword, your attack was so incredibly powerful that you cut the monster in a second. But Noroa wasn't really conscious at the time. Turns out he was in bloodlicker control, but somehow he passed out. Jinx called his name several times while he was unconscious. It took him a few minutes to wake up, and he panicked, thinking the monster might still be out there. Jinx reassured him that he could calm down now, and informed him about what happened. That he defeated the monster and fainted. She claimed it would be a good time for him to rest now, although he could not believe that she would say that, because it was he who had defeated the monster. The power of the sword was something totally out of this world, no doubt, and hearing it from Jinx made him believe that he had actually defeated the monster. Although he did not remember anything after the second he drew the sword from the sheath, he suspected that he might have gotten out of control like Riz, but seemed different in his case. Because he managed to overcome the control of the sword, which should exert overwhelming pressure on anyone, he thought the reason could be that there are no more living beings around him. The bloodlicker certainly wasn't a weapon to play with, considering its monstrous force. While the positive side that Noroa saw was that this was the first time he could take down a monster, he wasn't sure if it was really happening. Then he heard Jinx whisper something. He asked what was wrong, and she pointed out to him that everything was going too far so smoothly that for some reason it didn't seem true. He did not understand what she meant by it, so she drew his attention to the fact that he could equip as many cursed items as he wanted. And just then R met someone as handsome as she did, who allowed him to steal the cursed equipment from others. She found it suspicious, as if someone had already planned all this. Noroa ignored the compliments she made to herself, and, besides them, added that a cursed item had recently been discovered in the dungeon suddenly, and mentioned that there was a very small chance that any experienced adventurer would make the mistake of touching it, which meant that even Riz, holding the cursed sword, could be part of someone's plan, and after hearing that, he managed to understand where she was going. He could not help but agree that there were certainly many coincidences happening at the same time, making him feel that there must be a master behind everything. Noroa tried to think if there was something or someone he knew, and could be organizing these events to help him acquire cursed equipment. So Jinx sighed. Leaving it aside for now, she told you to let it go for a while, because it's no use thinking about it now. She told him that even if someone was behind all this, Noroa just needed to get stronger to get through any obstacle. And she herself wanted him to become strong, because she'd be in trouble if he died. Jinx decided to guide him as much as he could, and seeing her worried about him, he heard her seriously, until she started talking about wanting to eat all sorts of dishes, meals and kitchens, which meant that she would be able to eat anything she wanted. She'd be able to eat anything she wanted. Noroa thought he shouldn't depend only on the sword, and you should be stronger for yourself, so you could handle things without ever needing it then. Suddenly, Jinx suggested that they explore dungeons. To what he replied, confused. She explained that he should hunt dungeons to acquire stronger cursed equipment, like Bloodlicker's sword. And he certainly saw a reason behind her argument. He believed that the fact that he had 9,099 hardware slots would certainly help him carry powerful cursed equipment that no one else would dare use. He could release these sleeping powers, which were deeply hidden inside these dungeons, and all this to become stronger. Jinx was happy to see that he finally cheered up and told him to make sure he collected more cursed equipment, which in turn would lead him to a peak where no one else would be able to face him in this world. And with that decided, she instantly ordered him to go straight to the dungeon, which scared him. He told her it was too soon, and she advised him that there was no better time than the present, so they should leave immediately. Noro could see how determined Jinx was to help him, and with a smile, he remembered that the universal truth of before was certainly being applied to his life in a very unique way. After that, he went to the nearest town called Jit's Town, and after realizing it wasn't a dungeon, Jinx got angry and then accused him of cheating her like that. But in reality, they were in the Guild of Adventurers while he told her that he came here to make preparations before he left for a dungeon. She called him a worse thing without hearing what he was saying. While he was just following the common logic, Noro said Jinx was the only one who knew what he was doing, and that he was the only one who knew what to do. Noro was the only one who knew what to do. Entering a dungeon, for this, it was necessary to obtain permission from the guild and control of the dungeon before entering it. Otherwise, those who entered without it would be treated as poachers. Jinx didn't like to have to go through those procedures, while Noro was a little worried that people could get suspicious of him if they saw that he was talking to a doll sitting on his shoulders. He wished he'd hidden it inside his coat. But there wasn't much time to lose, so you just got into the guild, and was immediately the subject of many eyes of high-ranking adventurers. Noro stood still for a second after his entry, because a quick look at him was enough for everyone to mock him for taking a doll with him. They laughed at him and explained to Noro that he should go play with her somewhere else. Noro knew that something like this was inevitable, while Jinx was upset that they'd be made to mock like that. Noro calmly told him that they should just do the paperwork and leave quickly for the dungeon. Then at the reception, the guild employee exclaimed to him that he was signing for an S classification dungeon. She did it because she was worried if someone at a lower level, like Noro, should even be allowed in the dungeon. He told him not to worry, because he was just a mere baggage carrier, and came here just to explore the area, and prepare for future references with other groups. The guild official accepted his reasoning and asked him to wait a moment while preparing the necessary documents. She personally warned him not to think of entering the dungeon alone, because the guild no longer had the resources to spend just to recover the body of a greating adventurer. He accepted his words and said he would take these things into consideration. So, after knowing he was a greating adventurer, another adventurer came to say that dungeons were not a playground where someone could go alone, unprepared, and carelessly. Noro got angry, but still tried to smile falsely to get into the dungeon quickly. He knelt down and apologized to the boy for anything that caught his eye, and the boy thought he was funny. Then the boy noticed a doll on his shoulder and tried to reach out to hold Jinx, but she just waved with her hand, telling him not to touch her with his dirty hands. The adventurous man was bewildered when a doll hit his hand, so he reminded Jinx not to talk. Guy thought Noro was one of those entertainers who could do a lot of voices. He liked Noro, and then asked if he was a baggage carrier, inviting him to his group of B-rating adventurers. The guy, bluntly, told Noro that people like him were good at being bait and human shields. So Jinx punched the bald guy in the face, and he fell to the ground while she escaped without anyone noticing. She was extremely happy after she could do that, and I told Noro had only forbidden her to speak. Noro then told Jinx that she was a good person. Noro wished that doll could have an option to add brain, enough to understand that the way she just punched her as she screamed her name kind of blew it. He drew the unwanted attention of many adventurers and realized that he should just escape from there. He said a loud apology as he left quickly, becoming someone everyone thinks is dangerous. And anyway, you decided to move on quickly to the S classification dungeon. Spider Pass. Noro was excited for another adventure, while Jinx told him that he should go to him, because they should quickly finish this, since she likes to sleep early. Noro then asked her in his form if it would be okay for him to wield the bloodlicker, since there was a chance that the bloodlicker could not only destroy monsters, But the whole cave, if it wasn't careful enough, she assured that it would be safe, because the dungeons themselves were only classified as SSS. So it would not be easy for any other SSS classification item, such as blood liquor, to damage them. Noro was surprised to hear that even dungeons were considered equipment, and he could see from her expression that Jinx was not lying when he said that. So Noro inadvertently stepped on something, and suddenly a great horde of murderous spiders of level D fell on him. He started running, screaming how much he hated bugs, and Jinx hated insects too. She asked him to quickly kill the spiders, and hearing her flawlessly, he released the blood liquor and struck his fatal berserker blow across the area. His sword was certainly too powerful for any monster. But, as always, he woke up sometime later due to the retreat of the sword. He was surprised to see Jinx was still alive, but this dungeon had begun to become dangerous from the beginning, which proved that it was certainly an S classification dungeon, which had not yet been conquered by anyone, mainly due to the high-level monsters present here, and until then, maybe he was no match for the weaker monsters. But now that he's entered the Berserker Bloodlicker mode, he was a ranking adventurer, so with the S rating gun, he no longer cared for any difficulty that arose in his way. So it didn't take him long to get to the dungeon chief's office. He couldn't believe how fast he got there, only by the power of the Bloodlicker. So Jinx said he was wrong about it. She told him it wasn't just thanks to the sword that he managed to get here, but that he himself was strong enough to deal with the retreat of the sword throughout the course. He was surprised to hear from her that, in fact, he was skilled with the sword and had enough knowledge about the monsters, which helped him get there. She explained that the equipment itself did not have a brain, so it only improved the user's senses as it expanded. Then, in fact, all force came from Noro's knowledge, which allowed him to get there without any monster being strong enough to cause him difficulties. Not only that, but he was also very different from those other high-ranking adventurers who simply neglected their daily training and let their equipment do all the work. Noro was surprised to see Shed hit something like that, but he was not yet used to receiving praise, so he felt a little ashamed and decided to continue keeping his senses alert. He asked Jinx if she was sure they'd be able to find some cursed equipment in that place. She told him there was a way to confirm the chances of there being cursed equipment in a high-level dungeon like that. So you explained that, even if the dungeon level was A or B, there was the possibility of normal equipment being of the same level or lower level. If there were cursed equipment in the dungeon, it would certainly be the same level as the dungeon, or even higher, therefore, as they were in a level S dungeon. She stated that they had good chances of finding cursed equipment there. He remembered that it made a certain sense, since he got the SSS level leech in a level B dungeon. She only reported that cursed equipment was always the most powerful weapons. Only no one had been able to use them in all their potential, because of the retreat, people tended to make their slaves use them to cause destruction in enemies, who probably counterattack. So she justified that the retreat of cursed equipment was actually what made those weapons so powerful. However, it was then that he realized that he could collect cursed equipment properly, so that they would cross each other's conditions and cancel the curse. So you decided to go to the dungeon and collect the cursed equipment. He then asked Jinx for help. Jinx assured that even after so much knowledge, she would still be on his side, because it was the strongest cursed equipment in any way, since she could simply take any cursed equipment. Nora wondered if he'd be able to find the cursed equipment that matched the blood in front of him, and if there really would be something even stronger ahead of him. Then, with the suspense in his mind, he opened the gates of the chief's office. At the front, he saw a giant monster, like a spider, and realizing he was the boss of a hellish dungeon, he wished he could run away in fear. But he didn't want to run this time. Now that he had strength at his side, he wanted to test as far as his power would lead him, as he was preparing to confront the flesh and bone spider queen, the head of the dungeon. It sounded like this dungeon boss was way superior to what he could handle. But even after that, he did not flee, for he made the decision to put his faith and the power to which he had become accustomed on the way to the chief's walk. He thought he could do that. You thought you could expose yourself to the leech now, but note that the leech mode would only be offensive. He didn't want to be careless here because if he took a single blow from the dungeon boss, he'd be finished. So now he's come up with a plan to be the first to attack. At that moment, he released the sword, having a little control over it, and it all ended in a second. Because he managed to cut the head of the dungeon alone, the head of the Spider Queen was scattered all over the chief's office while he remained erect, like a proud warrior. He was breathing with difficulty after the fight, with blood running from his leech sword, and now that he has defeated a dungeon boss rank, he wondered if he had become a legend because of it. So Jinx spoke and said that even the dungeon boss was just a small fish for him, which led them to clean the dungeon. Meanwhile, Noro was still surprised that he remained conscious throughout the fight this time, and still won so easily. Jinx caught his eye, and showed him the treasure box they received after defeating the head of the dungeon. He was excited to receive a reward. Jinx informed you that the treasure chest was a chest of rewards for all your effort, and they were happy to open it while they wanted cursed equipment. But when he opened it, to his surprise, saw there was something like a little ball inside the treasure chest. He wondered if this little thing was cursed equipment or something, because he had no idea what was waiting for him.